What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you, and one that I imagine is probably somewhat anticipated. I know this band has definitely blown up here recently. We are going to go over the latest offering from Jinjer, Duél. This also comes out on the 7th of February on Napalm Records. This band formed in 2008 in Ukraine. This is their 5th album overall. Actually, Rin and I reviewed their last one, Wallflowers, back in 2021, I believe. And I came upon this band, I think it was their song like Aquarius or something like that. It was like a live performance thing in the studio, and you know, it kind of spellbound a lot of people, almost went viral just because all of a sudden this chick went from like amazing singing to growling her guts out, and people that weren't into metal were like, holy shit, how do they do that? That's impossible. That's ridiculous. And then metalheads were like, this kind of thing happens kind of often, honestly. First time on the internet. And describing this band's sound, it's kind of a blend. It's, got elements of metalcore, groove metal, progressive metal. There's definitely some djent in there too. It's all kind of homogenized into one sound and headed up by Tatiana and her absolutely amazing vocals.
Today is my first day listening to this band. To be honest with everybody here, all of our viewing audience, everybody, I thought this was Spirit Box.
Oh, that's okay. The Grammys thought Spirit Box was poppy. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, but I'd never given this band a chance based on the fact that I'd heard Spirit Box and was like, meh. And for whatever reason, I just thought Jinjer was in the same vein as that, so I was like, meh, and didn't give it a chance until today. And today is the day I realized I fucked up. And here's why I fucked up. What I expected versus what I got. What I expected was some poppy thing with metalcore riffs in it. And I got a sound that, for me, I was very, very fond of when I was in my mid to late 20s. I got a heavy, chuggy, kind of djenty sound and just tons of sick grooves all over this record.
Yeah, this band, I would say, there's definitely a ton of Meshuggah influence. There's definitely a lot of stuff that's comparable to bands like Entheos. Actually, we were just talking about how much some of these breakdowns and like lurching, bending riffs kind of sounded like, A Life Once Lost once they discovered Meshuggah.
Mm-hmm, right.
And this album doesn't lure you in with any soft melodies or anything right out of the gate. The opening track, Tantrum, kicks off like a tantrum. Honestly, I thought it fucked up and started 3 or 4 seconds into the song, but no, it just opens and explodes. It's fast, it's chuggy. There are almost entirely growled vocals on it. It is an absolutely bombastic start.
Immediately off the bat, I got reminded of Entheos. And it's not because they have a female singer. It was mostly because of the mix of the record. This is a very raw-sounding production. There's no real effects on the vocals. The guitars sound, I think, pretty much what they would sound like if you simply put a mic up to their amps. The drums have a real, I don't want to say thin sound to them, but they're very, very natural. That snare's got a wicked pop to it. The rhythm section in this band is on point. The rhythm work in general, I think, is one of the most entertaining things about this record. Like, they are off to the races, and they are playing nothing that is considered normal. It's all off-time, djenty groove. The snare drum, I'm telling you, that man loves his snare. Full of ghost notes, full of snare rolls. Again, where was this when I was 25? That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think Tatiana would have been in grade school.
Probably. We're old.
Honestly, stuff like this kind of makes the term groove metal not like a dirty term where people just look down and it's like, oh, Pantera or whatever. For people that don't like Pantera, I generally don't associate with them. But it's rhythmically a lot of fun. Every song there, again, are like frequent off-time grooves. But it's nothing so overly complicated where you can't bang your head to it. Like, a lot of this, you're just like, yeah, dude, yeah.
Because the drummer does a good job with the kick drum by not making the kick drum patterns complex. They're usually pretty much on the beat. Like, if you even were to play this for a novice listener, you can still find the groove. It's still there because of where the kick patterns hit.
And the other part of the rhythms definitely comes down to, like, the guitars and Tatiana's vocals. There's this fun interweaving between the guitar riffs and Tatiana's vocal flips and just like her cadences in general. Now, while this has definitely been a trope that has shown up throughout all their albums, I think it's done way more effectively here. It just feels more focused. How the riffs will lurch and bend on some of her accents and such. And when she decides to get heavy, the band gets ridiculously heavy. Like, there are some absolutely savage breakdowns on here. Rogue in particular probably has some of my favorite grooves on the entire album, and it's not just because they reminded me of like a multitude of tracks off of Meshuggah's Nothing that might have something to do with it.
Or nothing to do with it.
But it's that constant pummeling syncopation with the chugs, and again, a lot of these bending, lurching riffs. But you also get like great spots of melody, but frequently the melodies are dark. And I like that. Like, she has a vocal range that would probably crush in terms of like poppier, more accessible music, but she chooses these very dark, haunting passages and even makes her vocals kind of like flutter and like ghostly like patterns. And that matches a lot of the like interesting, more like angular, distant riffs that show up on here that kind of give this a little bit of atmosphere, because the production here I would say is like effectively underproduced. It does sound more raw. There's not a lot of extras like synths and tons of like vocal processing. In fact, Tatiana sounds very natural on here. And again, everything sounds, again, crisp, clear, but it doesn't sound super processed. You know, there's definitely a fair amount of compression on it, but it sounds natural. And for me, that kind of like eliminates a lot of distractions. I'm not focusing on anything else other than just how the music is moving itself. And in terms of like their songwriting, it's really interesting because sometimes they will just like lay on a groove and beat you over the head. Again, Rogue, I think, is a great example of that. Hedonist. Someone's Daughter, I think, is a absolutely gnarly song that just makes use of a lot of cool, like, off time, just fun grooves. But sometimes you get a lot of like really cool builds in here, like Kafka. Kafka comes in with this almost kind of like drunken swagger. You get these like haunting, dissonant melodies, and again, this fluttered vocal pattern from Tatiana. And the song feels like very melancholic. It's, you know, kind of dark and a little withdrawn, but as the song builds, it starts getting more and more intense, and towards the end, it starts breaking into like these syncopated, like more mid-tempo chugs. Then you get like a flat-out D beat, and then all of a sudden you get blast beats, and it's honestly almost like a fucking deathcore song at that point.
And I like too that when they build that speed, they use counter rhythms to do it. The rhythms are different from what her vocal cadences are, and that's really neat too. Because it does start with a simple D beat, but they flip it a whole lot of times, and every time they flip it, it's always a counter rhythm to her vocal cadence. And by the time they get to the blast and everyone's firing on all cylinders, you're like, Jesus Christ, that was something else. And then you have songs like Fast Draw where they just come out swinging. And they go directly for the face, and they give you no time to dodge, no time to move. They're just on it. That song from beginning to end is pretty much just a barrage of nasty riffs. You got a bunch of down-picked hardcore riffs. You got a bunch of really sick off-time grooves. And there's something to me about off-time grooves. If you're going to do it, throw in some little bendies in the riffs, and they do. There's a bunch of like bendy, lurching riffs going on in there. That, to me, will always be music to my ears.
There's spots on that song that feel almost like grindcore-ish, like just like a little bit of like Napalm Death kind of squeezed its way in there. But it's also one of the most like straight ahead songs. Like, it is full bore from the start throughout the entire song. Like, even when it does slow down in the syncopated groups, it doesn't lose any momentum or any heaviness. That song is flat out feral from pretty much start to finish. And there are moments in here that kind of border on death metal at points. Dark Bile, while it starts off very proggy with its interesting little, like, I don't know what I call them, like atonal noodles, but they're definitely some noodles, and that really interesting skittering drum pattern. It feels like you're getting set up for like something that is, you know, maybe like almost like a real jazzy version of like Faith No More.
Yep.
And then you get into these bone-crunching syncopated riffs with like accented tremolo sections to kind of give them like a little bit of a death metal edge. While the song does get like bone-crunchingly heavy, it never loses that weird sort of like progginess too. Like, it comes back to those weird off-time grooves. There's some really big vocal hooks in there, and yeah, I'm going to keep circling back to the vocals because Tatiana's vocals, I think, are amazing on both sides of the spectrum. She has incredible cleans and really, really solid growls. But what I really like that just stands out to me are her cadences and her vocal rhythms. She finds unique hooks on here, and they kind of drive the songs in interesting ways. Like the title track in here, her clean vocals on there, she kind of follows the riff in like a really interesting manner because it's like kind of like this, you know, syncopated like staccato riff, and she's doing like kind of a rhythm on top of that. But I don't know, it's very hooky, and it's almost kind of got like, I don't know, like I wouldn't call it like flamenco or something like that, but it has like a pattern to it where it just has this very interesting hook. The same thing on Tumbleweed too. Like she has this fluttering approach that, I don't know, it just kind of like draws me in. And then by the time I'm like completely hooked in the clean vocal, she is barking hellfire in my face. Like, God, that was a really solid switch up. She just does this Beauty and the Beast thing really well. And again, it makes these songs interesting and they kind of have their own like little weird flow to them. And again, the syncopation on here, it's fun. There's almost kind of a looseness to it, but again, like if you break it down, like this band does very often, it's ridiculously tight and it's just pretty much on it the entire time. As far as any negatives, there were a couple songs that I didn't get into as much, or at least like just had like something about them like, maybe that transition didn't necessarily work. Someone's Daughter in particular, I like that song, especially like the back 3/4 of it. It opens up, you know, a little bit softer, a little bit more, you know, I wouldn't say like poppy, but it's definitely very accessible. It's got this nice little groove to it. And then it goes and makes a beeline for the heavy and never returns really to that softer material. Like you do get some clean vocals later, but it's not in that vein. And while I like that soft opening, it just doesn't fit. I almost kind of wish they would just start with the heavy and just maintain the heavy throughout that entire song.
Yeah, because it makes it feel rushed otherwise. And then I had an issue with the end of Tumbleweed, even though I really like that song as well. It just stops. There's a very abrupt ending. And it's right in the middle of a groove, and it's actually like coming out of a breakdown groove, and it's not where I guess would have stopped it. But that doesn't also mean that I don't like that song. There's actually not really a song on this record that I don't pretty much thoroughly enjoy. I just thought the abrupt end was weird. Overall, though, I'm going to go ahead and give this 4 stars. Again, admittedly, this is not what I expected. I expected something stupid, and I got something really cool. This, again, speaks to 25-year-old me who was loving bands like Meshuggah, Entheos, Early Veil of Maya, A Life Once Lost, things like that. It's full of nasty, chuggy, down-tune riffs. Everything is off time. The drum work is pretty incredible. Dude, the bass work, we didn't even really talk about that. There are quite a few moments on this record, namely Tantrum and Green Serpent both have a moment in the song where everything cuts out and they get into this little isolated bass groove. And I tell you what, although it's not this man, he sounds a lot like Evan Brewer. If you guys listened to the Faceless back in when the Faceless was good, his bass playing kind of reminds me of Evan Brewer's solo albums. Again, not quite on that spectrum, but it's very close to that. Yeah, if you're into bands like Entheos and Veil of Maya and Meshuggah and Life Once Lost and pretty much everything just heavy and djenty and groovy, you're probably gonna like this. I'd recommend checking it out. Definitely don't confuse it for Spirit Box like one of us may have done. I'm an idiot. That's what you get.
I'm also at a 4. I really dug this, and it doesn't overdo any one of those things. Like, it doesn't feel like it's too much of a metalcore album. It doesn't feel like it's too much of a djent album. And honestly, in a weird way, I think groove metal kind of fits just because it's got a lot of fucking groove. But it's clever grooves. They're always like, you know, like 4/4 time moments where you can just kind of like just bang your head to. But it's all the accents that are around them. I think the riffs on here are a lot of fun. This is an improvement over the last one. The last one I thought was a little uneven. The transitions came a lot quicker, and I feel like they left stuff behind. I feel like they latch on to stuff that they know has a good hook and build on it this time. Tatiana is great as always. That's a big no shit. But yeah, I think the band sounds even tighter, and I love the drum work on here. The drum work in here is just flat out fun. It's got a good balance of like clean, catchy, like more melodic stuff, and then absolutely punishing heavy stuff on here. Yeah, pretty much if you're a fan of Veil of Maya, specifically like the earlier Veil of Maya, not like
not
later.
The new shit.
No one likes that. Also, again, A Life Once Lost, like specifically like Hunter and a great artist. Definitely Meshuggah, definitely Entheos. Yeah, if any of that sounds good to you, check this out. I think this is a solid album, honestly, in terms of stuff that I've listened to by this band. I think this is probably their best album yet. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They are only 99 cents, and our lone perk is doing members-only live streams, which we will be getting back to again. We're going to try to make them at least every month. And feel free to ask us whatever you want on there. If you want us to ask you questions. I don't know, that could be weird too, because we just ask weird questions of each other all the time. You don't want to know the conversations we have off camera.
That is a fair assessment.
Or do you?
You actually probably really don't want to hang out with us. I know you think that we're all shits and giggles over here, which is true.
We're mostly shits.
We're mostly shits, man.
But the memberships are the main way to support the channel. We still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, with our t-shirts and hats. That is linked down below in the video description. And of course, if you would like to join this channel, there's a join button somewhere down here.
It's there. I saw it. It's on my phone at least. I don't know if it's on everyone's. It's not important. If you want to join, please join. If you don't, you don't have to. Regardless, tons of stuff coming from Thralls of Metal, album reviews, discography rankings. We got At the Gates coming up next, which is going to be sweet. Multiple segments, States of Metal, Is It Metal, Is It Not Metal, Nick's never-ending collection updates, as well as a small multitude of other things, live forums, live discussions, live streams, our members-only stuff. We are doing things all the time here at Thralls of Metal, and we do it all for you. It's not for us. It's really not. It's for you guys. Because there's so many of you. We're past 20,000 subscribers, which is nuts. And we, if we could and had the time, would thank each and every single one of you, which I'm just going to do now. Here is a broad thing. Thank you to all of you. We appreciate it. We couldn't do it without you.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule. Tons of content coming in the future. So one more big thank you because of all your rulage. And we will catch you later.